So we're about halfway through House of the Dragon Season 2 right now, and watching it has really gotten me wanting to play Crusader Kings 3 again. So I did. And for the first time, I tried out the Game of Thrones mod, and it's fantastic. It's amazing. I have been having a lot of fun with it, and I've been trying to gush to all my friends about everything I've been doing and all the playthroughs and how great they are. And I don't really think they care, honestly. I don't think that they really want to read my very lengthy play by play notes about how great I think my playthroughs are. So I thought to make it all more palatable for everyone and to also be able to get it off my chest, I thought I would make a YouTube series to go through my most recent playthrough. I seriously hope you enjoy the crazy twists and turns that I've had with this recent playthrough. And without further ado, here we go. So the character that I'm going to be starting off as is a Stormlands gentleman. Well, I shouldn't say gentleman. He's actually a bastard. He is a lowborn bastard. At one point of his life, he was involved in a peasant rebellion. And in that rebellion, he distinguished himself as a pretty capable leader and also a pretty capable warrior. And he was able to leverage that experience into becoming a sellsword. And somewhat ironically, given his background, at the end of a particularly prestigious campaign, he was granted the lordship of the county of Bronzegate. So that's how we're going to begin. We're going to be beginning with this real bastard, former sellsword upstart. And he had to choose, a house name. He had to choose a coat of arms and a motto, since he's like the founding member of this new dynasty. And so he went with the name Reinhart, which I guess is kind of like a play on, heart being like, like a stag, like the Stormlands, rein being like, like reins, like a harness, so it's like harnessing the stag or whatever. Harnessing the stag would actually be a pretty good motto, now that I think about it. But the motto that he ended up going with was take hold, drive them out, which I think is pretty slapping in its own right. And because he's not really like a very, educated dude with a lot of creativity, he just went with a red background with golden antlers as his house sigil because that's good enough. The red for the kind of warrior background for his house, and the antlers because that's just like a Stormlands thing, and heart is in the name of his house, so there you go. He is House Reinhart, and this guy is ambitious. He's stubborn, and he's arrogant. This guy's a real piece of work. I wanted to make a guy who was just really freaking miserable to be around. I wanted to make the most, upstart peasant that I could, to just really get under the skin of all the, nobility that he would have to be around and work with. I wanted a fish out of water, just this kind of guy clawing his way up through the world, trying to get as much power as he could. So that's what we got. We got this ambitious, stubborn, arrogant, real piece of crap bastard, and he and he's got a mullet, and he is just he's just great. I can't wait to really get into it with this guy. So yeah, let's get started. So here he is. Here is Horus, and he finds himself deeply unpopular with his peers, with his liege. No one really likes him, but you know what? He doesn't care. What he cares about is his own prestige and his own place in life. And that said, now that he's a freshly minted lord of the Stormlands, he thinks that he better get started with, securing that legacy. So he starts looking for a wife. And being the arrogant piece of crap that he is, he wants to marry the most prestigious, person that he can goddamn find. So he puts feelers out there. He's sending out ravens. He's looking in the Westerosi personal ads. And, there's some okay options out there. There's a prestigious daughter of a Westerosi house, but they're like a little kid, and he feels weird about marrying a little kid. He wants the prestige of marrying someone from a great house, but he doesn't want to marry a little kid. That it just seems weird to him. He wants a proper wife, so he keeps looking. And he finds some other options, but they're kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum. They're not kids. They're just a little bit too old, like older women from these great houses who haven't been married off yet. And he doesn't want women that other people didn't want. What he wants is a young woman from a great house. So he looks farther and farther afield, and it's across the sea in Essos, in Lys, when he finally finds what he's looking for. He finds this silver-haired girl named Rhaenyra of House Brightflame. How much more prestigious can you get than marrying someone from the Targaryen dynasty? He has found exactly what he's looking for. Now, the only hitch is that her liege won't let her marry Orys unless Orys promises to hold a grand wedding celebrating the union, which Orys very readily agrees to because, you know what, this is exactly what he wanted, and he doesn't really give a crap how much money he has to spend on it. And as far as he's concerned, the bigger the spectacle, the better. So he betroths Rhaenyra Brightflame, and, he could host the grand wedding immediately, and he considers it, but he really, again, this is an ambitious guy. He wants to hold the biggest goddamn wedding that he can. So he knows that he has 3 years before his promise of the grand wedding expires. So what he does is he just waits 3 years, putting away those pennies, waiting and waiting, year after year, building up as much money as he can to throw the most extravagant wedding possible. And at the very last moment, and almost 3 years to the day, a raven arrives in Lys saying that Orys is finally ready to host the grand wedding. Now, I should mention at this point that the Bright Flames, they're not exactly the most welcome in Westeros. There's a good reason why they aren't Targaryens by name, and there's a reason why they live in Essos. They are what some might be considered exiled. Now, you would think that a exiled Targaryen cadet house probably wouldn't be welcome back in Westeros. However, the thing is, Rhaenyra, being the head of House Brightflame at the time, her marriage to Orys basically extinguishes the house. So any kind of threat that the Bright Flames might have had to the realm is kind of taken care of by this wedding to this weird upstart peasant lord. So people from across Westeros gather to Bronzegate to celebrate this wedding between House Reinhart and Rhaenyra Brightflame, which not only symbolizes Orys's own elevation in the world, but also kind of heals a rift that had existed between the realms. So Orys finally meets his bride face to face for the first time. She has come across Lys, traveled days, if not weeks, to get there to meet this man who is going to be her new husband. And he can tell right away that she does not like him, that she is uncomfortable, she is nervous, she avoids his gaze. And I mean, Orys would, of course, prefer a wife who loved him, but honestly, in the balance of things, he cares more about his own ambitions and prestige than silly things like whether or not he's liked by his wife. So he kind of just rolls with it and knows that the important thing is that he is marrying a bright flame. And so the festivities continue. Now, in that 3-year time that Orys had been saving money for this wedding, the only thing that he could really afford to make it really spectacular was really impressive and exotic performers. He brought in entertainers who would just wow people and just make it a celebration to remember. So Rhaenyra's mother comes up to Orys and pretty much says to him point blank that he's not good enough for her daughter, and that her daughter deserves better than a upstart peasant sellsword who was born a bastard. To which Orys probably says something quite rude and uncouth because he is just that kind of guy. But then Rhaenyra's mother looks around and sees, these performers getting ready with, juggling torches, and she hears wild animal sounds coming from crates, and she says, this all kind of seems a bit dangerous. And Orys, being the arrogant guy he is, says, don't worry about it. It's fine. These are professionals. This is fine. It's going to be a great party. Just shut up, drink your wine, forget about it. He's happy to know after this is all over, he's probably never going to have to see this lady again. She's going to go back to Lys. Rhaenyra's father's going to go back to Lys, and that'll be it. He just needs to make it through this goddamn wedding. So the wedding continues, and Orys, is sitting at a banquet table, and a servant comes over and presents him with a chest. He opens up the chest, and lo and behold, it's full of gold. And the servant explains quite pleasantly that this is not just any gift, that this is a royal gift from King Aegon V himself to Orys. And it is at this moment that Orys realizes that the goddamn King of Westeros has come to his wedding. And really, when you think about it, it's not too much as a surprise. I mean, again, Orys is marrying into the Targaryen dynasty. He is pretty much solving one of the Targaryens' biggest problems by sealing this bright flame rift. And of course, King Aegon V has traveled all the way from King's Landing down to Bronzegate and is now at his wedding. So Orys does what any ambitious man would do and immediately sets out to try to ingratiate himself with the king. And he finds it actually surprisingly easy to get close to the king. And he's further surprised by the fact that Aegon seems like a pretty down-to-earth guy. Aegon laughs at his dumb jokes. He's kind of rough around the edges. It seems like Aegon and him have a lot more in common than he would have expected to have with the King of Westeros. Unbeknownst to Orys, of course, Aegon had a pretty low-key youth, being the squire to a lowborn knight, as detailed in the Dunk and Egg books. Aegon and Orys actually quickly become quite close. And Aegon and Orys both seem like they genuinely want to see each other again. And Orys, being the ambitious sort that he is, feels pretty good about becoming friends with the King of Westeros at his wedding. So the festivities continue, and the band starts playing raucous music, and the doors burst open, and in comes performers with torches, twirling, juggling. These are those fire dancer people that Rhaenyra's mother had been so concerned about earlier. And they're coming through, and everyone's having a great time. It's exactly the kind of spectacle that Orys was hoping for when he planned this wedding. It's what he spent 3 years, putting away his gold for. He can see on the faces of his fellow lords that they are just genuinely pleased and impressed and entertained by all of this, and he feels great. He feels great until, that is, Rhaenyra, having gotten up to get closer to the performers, trips on her own dress, tumbles into one of them, and bursts into flames. The first thing Orys does is he looks at Rhaenyra's mother, who is just looking at him with daggers in her eyes. This kind of enraged, I told you so ferocity. And then the second thing Oris does is he pounces into action to try to save Rhaenyra. Because, as far as he's concerned, he should be the one to do it. Not because he's a good guy, just because, he thinks he's the most capable. So he manages to put the fire out. Everyone's kind of shocked. Everyone's kind of upset. Although, weirdly, with the exception of King Aegon, he actually seems like he has a different look on his face. It's kind of hard to parse exactly what he's thinking. Kind of a mix of fascination and confusion. But Rhaenyra is grateful. She is very understanding about it being an accident. No one, except for Rhaenyra's mother, seems to hold it against Oris. And weirdly, it actually seems like the whole ordeal has brought Rhaenyra and Oris closer together. She thinks to herself, well, maybe this, kind of uncouth, rough around the edges peasant man really isn't all that bad. So the time comes for the consummation. Oris and Rhaenyra are taken up to the bedchamber. They're plied with wine, and they're kind of left to their own devices. Once the two of them are alone, Rhaenyra presents Oris with a token of appreciation. She has commissioned a ribbon with his house motto on it, which he loves because he's a kind of a narcissist. And they get into bed to, do the marital thing that all newlyweds do. And they're both kind of awkward. It feels a little weird. It kind of seems like they're just going through the motions. It's not really what Oris expected it to be. And afterwards, he kind of senses that Rhaenyra is a little bit cold towards him. And she seems a little apologetic. And she explains to him that, that men really aren't her thing. And so here he is. He's made it to be the Lord of Bronzegate. He's managed to betroth practically a Targaryen princess. He's waited 3 years for the marriage. And on the wedding night, he finds out that she's gay. And, obviously, it's not what he expected. It's not what he wanted. And as the two of them go to bed that night, in separate beds, of course, he wonders about the future. He thought that tonight, maybe he is going to be producing an heir, and not just an heir, but one with Targaryen blood. And now he has to wrestle with the fact that perhaps his new wife may not let him touch her ever again. And what this means for his legacy and his plans for succession. So the wedding is over. The guests have all returned back to their own realms, their own castles, and Oris paces through his halls. Rhaenyra spends her time alone in her apartment with her own servants, and Oris, again, finds himself alone. The wedding wasn't exactly what he thought it would be. He knows that the other lords of Westeros look at him and don't necessarily just see an upstart peasant anymore. Now he knows that they see this man who is, married a Targaryen princess. But he doesn't necessarily feel fulfilled by it all. It's not exactly what he had thought it would be, and he feels unfulfilled. He looks at his life, and he wonders about his legacy. He wonders about his future. He holds the ribbon in his hand that Rhaenyra had given him that says, "Take hold. Drive them out." And he summons his septon. And Oris says to his septon, "I would very much like to not just be the Lord of Bronzegate, I would very much like to have more." Sheerfield, to the east, was just inherited by a toddler. And I think the people of Sheerfield deserve better than that. The septon looks a bit uncomfortable, fidgets, bows his head, says Sheerfield is his right to rule. And Oris says, "I would like you to make it my right to rule." The septon, again, looking uncomfortable, bows his head, and he says, "I'll see what I can do."